Hello and welcome. I'm Jess of Jess's Fab Food, and I'm so glad you found me today. Whether you have stumbled upon Jess's fearless fermenting brew your own booch because you registered in one of my workshops and got yourself a SCOBY from me, or you found me on a search because you've recently acquired a SCOBY of your own, welcome. I'm here to try and teach in the most simple and basic layman's terms how to make yourself brew your own booch at home. For many of us, discovering fermented foods is a new and ongoing process, and for some people the process of brewing your own kombucha is one step in a long history of digestion, promoting foods that you have been fermenting yourself at home. So whether you're a brand newbie or kombucha is just the next in your list of do-it-yourself fermented foods at home, welcome and thanks for trying. Fermented foods have been enjoyed for thousands of years by cultures all around the world, and some of the main reasons that people love fermented foods is that they do help aid in digestion significantly. The process of fermentation makes it easier for us to digest and absorb the nutrients in the food that we are consuming. And sometimes, most often, the process of fermentation itself actually yields a large concentration of probiotics, which do help to nourish our microbiome, and that helps maintain our digestive process. In a lot of cases, fermented foods are actually more nutritious because they're easier to break down. They're easier for our body to absorb, and that actually helps improve our body's ability to take in the nutrients that are found in the foods. Kombucha itself is basically a combination of sugar and tea that has then been fermented by the addition of a SCOBY, which stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. And through the fermentation process, the actual caffeine from the tea and the sugar are consumed by the bacteria and yeast in that SCOBY, so that they generally, the sugar and the caffeine are the two kind of ne'er-do-wells that people see in those foods, and the fermentation process actually breaks those down, and what we're left with is this slightly sweet, tart, tangy beverage that is just rife with probiotics that are super awesome for our digestive system. So today I'm going to show you step one, and then as you work your way through this video, you will see all of the stages along the way, hopefully making plenty of sense for you so that you can successfully brew your own kombucha at home. I have been brewing my own for the last couple of years. I recently had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about why fermented foods are so amazing during my culinary nutrition program with the Academy of Culinary Nutrition. And prior to that, I just kind of loved kombucha, and I knew it was great for digestion, but learning the process and why it was great for digestion has been a lot of fun. And sharing the process with people who are equally interested to learn has been awesome as well. So step one is to actually brew your tea. So for the first stage in fermenting kombucha, you do want to use a black or a green tea. As I mentioned, you do need the caffeine and the tannins in the tea to actually help feed the SCOBY for the fermentation process. So at this point, what we're going to use, I am using one of my favorite epicure teas, our sencha and jasmine green tea, but you can also use any one of your favorite green or black tea, but make sure that it does contain caffeine. So for stage one, you want to use 2 to 3 bags. I'm going to use 2 of our sencha and jasmine green tea. And you may find, if you have done any searching online, that a lot of recipes tell you to use upwards of a cup to a cup and a half of sugar. I am not a big fan of using that much sugar, and my SCOBYs have not complained yet in 2 years that I haven't fed them enough. So I start phase 1 of my kombucha with 1/4 cup of organic cane sugar. That's what this is. Pardon my repurposed container. Actually, no, don't pardon my repurposed container. Please, reduce, reuse, recycle. Repurpose containers often. So 1/4 cup is actually 4 tablespoons. So that is what I am going to throw in here. And I'm just using organic cane sugar. Again, I prefer not to use refined white sugar. Your next step is to actually add your water and brew your tea. So I'm going to go slow. Again, if you're using green tea, you don't want freshly boiled water. You do want to let it boil and then let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes in the kettle before you use it, because you will otherwise scorch your green tea and it will be really bitter regardless of how long you ferment it for. And I'm just giving it a bit of a swirl here to dissolve my sugar. Make sure you're choosing a container, a glass container that is capable of holding hot liquids, because the last thing you want is to shatter your glass. And I have on more than one occasion shattered these glasses. I'm not sure whether this jar is tempered glass or not. I have switched to mostly doing my kombucha with a green tea because the water has had a few minutes to cool before I throw it in. It does help that if you are going to use a large glass container that you're not sure if it's tempered, bring it to room temperature, or even better, run it under some hot water first so that you're not pouring hot water from your kettle directly into a cold glass jar. You're less likely to get it shattering there as well. So once you see that the sugar has mostly started to dissolve, just top it up. You want anywhere from 6 to 8 cups of water in there. I've been brewing in this jar so long, I generally know approximately how high to fill it. You do want to leave enough space that you have room to then add your SCOBY and your starter liquid on that stage. So this is stage 1. From here, we're just going to let the tea steep. I'm going to leave the bags in there overnight. Let the tea get nice and strong and cool completely to room temperature. So join me back here. By the magic of modern technology, it will be in the quick flick of the next scene on this video, but it will be tomorrow once the tea has had a chance to completely steep and cool back down to room temperatures. I do actually recommend covering it as well while you let it cool, just so that nothing gets in there. So we will see you again soon. Welcome back. So you've had a day for your tea to steep in here. It's cooled back down to room temperature. So what we're gonna do is take your tea bags out. Again, use as many bags as you like. 2 to 3 is probably enough if you're brewing this much tea. If you're gonna try and brew, 12 to 18 cups, you might want another bag in there. But you can see that it's nice. It's a nice rich green tea. It's got a great color. One of the main reasons you want to make sure that it has cooled back down to room temperature is that your SCOBYs can't handle the hot. So you don't want to brew a hot jug of tea and then throw your SCOBY in immediately. The heat, it will kill it. This step is actually pretty simple. Once you've got your nice cooled down jug of brewed tea with your sugar in there, you're just gonna grab a SCOBY and add her to the mix. Make sure again when you're dealing with your SCOBYs that you have clean hands. Again, they are a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, so touching them with dirty hands means that you may upset their pH and they won't work properly. It can potentially induce the growth of mold or harmful bacteria. Again, I am a hobby home brewer, so I don't use a pH meter to check the pH, but if you do notice that your ferment isn't progressing the way you want it to, that it doesn't smell quite right or it doesn't have the flavor you're expecting, then a pH kit may come in handy. the change in pH can affect the overall ability of the SCOBY to work properly. So again, I am I would say semi-amateur home brewer, so I do it for fun because I enjoy the end product. I understand the basics of the science behind it, but I am by no means the expert. And if you do find that you are struggling at any stage, you may want to enlist the help of a more qualified expert, if you will. I've been brewing for years, but I just kind of do it for fun. I will point out here, you can probably see floating in here, there's lots of these brown sludgy bits and things in my hotel. Those are completely normal. You will be able to tell the difference between mold. Mold usually is black, white, or a greenish blue. It will be right on the surface. It will have a fuzzy looking texture, where this stuff is just strands of the yeast and bacteria, and most often that brown stuff will grow under the new SCOBY that's going to form in here. That's generally a pretty good way to be able to tell the difference between whether it's just some of the growth and mold. So grab a SCOBY. I'm just going to grab this baby off the front, off the top here, and you can see it's pretty squidgy. It's kind of like a jellyfish. I try not to handle her too much. Drop her in there, and then you're going to want to take about between half a cup to a cup of your starter liquid here and top up your brewed tea. So just pour that in there. And the combination of the starter liquid and the SCOBY is what you need to get this process going. Now, your SCOBY may float, your SCOBY may sink, it doesn't really matter. I find that she floats for the first day or so, and as the fermentation process moves along, she will sink, and her new baby is going to form here along the surface. So once she's in there with her starter liquid, you're just going to cover it back up again. I do recommend at this stage that I'm just using an old washcloth here. You can use a cut-off piece of kitchen towel, etc. I have found through trial and error over the years that you want something that's got a super tight knit, but it's still breathable. I don't recommend cheesecloth unless you've folded it about 12 times. Where I am, I'm in Ontario, Canada. It is currently, at filming, July. It's quite hot. It's fruit fly season. And in the past, I have discovered that if you don't fold the cheesecloth enough times and have a thick enough weave, that the fruit flies can get in between the layers of cheesecloth, and they will end up in here. They will lay their eggs on the surface of your SCOBY baby. It is horrendous, disgusting. You will have to say goodbye to that SCOBY and that entire batch. So my recommendation is an old face cloth or kitchen towel, simply because it's still breathable, but it has a nice tight weave to it that nothing can get in. This stage is the longest stage in our process. So now that we have her set up like this, you're going to want to put her somewhere safe. A countertop that is out of direct sunlight, so you don't want her sitting in a beaming sunbeam. If you have space in a cupboard somewhere, you can put her in the dark. I just put her in a corner in the kitchen, away from the direct heat of my cooker, out of the direct sun, and don't place it anywhere close to a garbage bin or a diffuser, an essential oil diffuser. The main reasons for that is that, again, the garbage is a notorious place for mold and bacteria to grow. If you can smell the garbage, that means that there are particles in the air that could then potentially get in here, could result in mold growth in your batch, could also result in the flavor of your batch of kombucha tasting like the smell of your garbage. For similar reasons, don't keep near an essential oil diffuser. You are vaporizing those oils. Some of them, it's may affect the SCOBY's ability to do her job. Some of them may affect the flavor of your booch. Some of them, maybe we don't want to be drinking. So I say don't keep her near anything that's going to be potentially a cause for disruption in the fermentation process. You do want it to stay at room temperature, as close to undisturbed as possible. So you don't want to stir it, you don't want to sugar it around and move it too much. That's why I say choose a place on your counter or in a cupboard where it can just kind of sit there. This stage, you're going to leave it anywhere from 10 to 18 days, depending on the flavor you want, depending on the level of fizz that you want. I usually leave it for about 14 days. I generally run about a 2-week fermentation on my first round of fermentation, but it's entirely up to you. You can take the cover off as you go and just give it a bit of a smell. It will start to smell vinegary. You'll notice that the color will change, that you will have this new SCOBY baby forming across the surface. Those are all completely normal. And again, as you're brewing, if anything becomes a question, you can always personal message me through here. When I first started out brewing, I relied heavily on good old Google and found a couple of really great resources to help me answer a lot of my questions as I went along. But I'm also happy to help anybody who has ever registered for my workshops. When I hand out a SCOBY and step-by-step instructions, they also get access to me. So you can always send me messages and ask questions. So from this point, we're gonna put the hotel back in the fridge with our SCOBYs that we're not using so that they can sleep. And we're gonna leave this jar on the counter, undisturbed, out of sunlight for about 2 weeks. And then again, through the magic of modern technology, you will get to join me back here in just a few short seconds. Now that we've had 2 solid weeks of fermentation time, it probably looks a little bit different in your jar than when we started. You have these interesting little weirdos in there. Depending on what kind of tea you used, it has probably changed a bit of color. The black tea, I know, gets lighter as it ferments, and so does the green tea. It changes color slightly. So the first thing I'm going to do, and if you don't have all of the tools, then you might want to just watch and grab the tools and do it after. I'm going to take the mama and baby SCOBY out of our batch here and add them back to the hotel. So you can touch them. I know you guys touched the original when we first started the batch. They're weird. They're a little bit squidgy, kind of. I don't even know how else to describe them, but as long as your hands are clean and you can just kind of reach in and pull it out. So this whole beast is the new baby born of this fermentation. So I'm throwing that one in. Take the original that you used to start this batch, throw it in as well. And when we're done, I'm gonna add probably a little more liquid to there, but for now it's okay. And then take your batch of fermented stuff, and I'm just gonna drain it through a sieve because I don't want to drink all those big sludgy bits, and you can see there's sludgy bits in the bottom as well. I mean, that's all of the bacteria and yeast. That's the stuff that's good for your digestive system, but you can see there's like lumps stuck in there as well. I don't really want to drink the lumps. That's why I strain it through there. I'm just gonna set the sieve out of there for now. And then the next stage is that we're gonna, so there's our hotel, and that's, you just keep them in the fridge until you need one to brew another batch. So I'm gonna put them over here. And then what we're actually gonna do is get your new container ready to have that liquid poured in. So on this round, you need a little bit more sugar. It's kind of up to you. Actually, I'm gonna keep that in there. I usually only use about 2 tablespoons at this point, just enough to help get the the fizz. You can add more if you want it sweeter. I always kind of say start with less, and if you absolutely hate it, then add more on the next round. But it's always better to have less sugar in there than too much. And then once your sugar is in the bottom, add whatever flavor you want. So I still have some ginger in the fridge, so I'm going to do a different flavor. I'm doing strawberry basil with a little bit of vanilla. So just pop your fruit in there. Unfortunately, this jar doesn't have a really wide mouth, so it's one piece at a time. As long as your container is airtight for this round, it doesn't really matter what you're using. I know Melissa said all she has is big mason jars. As long as you screw the lid on tight, doesn't really matter. The swing top, I just like them because they're easier to seal and easier to shake to get all of the fruit and sugar mixed in. But if you don't have these, something that has a lid you can screw on tight is fine. I have a little bit of fresh basil from our herb garden on the deck there. So I have chopped it up en chiffonade, which is the description for cutting it into thin little ribbons. So they're in there. I think I have two medium-sized leaves. Again, if you don't like basil and you don't want to try this flavor combination, do not try this flavor combination. I'm planning on using at least a little bit of this for a strawberry basil mojito. And then I'm literally just gonna throw in a teeny tiny splash. I don't have vanilla pods, so I'm using pure extract. And it's like a splash, like a couple of drops, not even an eighth of a teaspoon. Otherwise, the flavor's way too overwhelming. And then once all of your flavor goods are in there, you just pour the liquid back in. I'm using a funnel because I have a very narrow bottle here. If you don't have such a narrow space, you can just use your sieve. I am gonna run it through the sieve again before I put it down in there, just in case there's some more lumps of sludge. Now, this might be exciting for our tiniest viewer because it's going to get really fizzy and bubbly. So watch as I pour it down in there. You want to fill it almost to the top. You need a little bit of room for the gas that's going to get formed as it ferments. But the less space that you have in there, the better. And that's us. That's about as much as I am gonna fit in there. You can see all the bubbles fizzing up in there, which is pretty cool. You want to seal the airtight bottle and then give it a gentle tip because you want to get all that sugar stirred in. So give it a gentle shake around until all that sugar has dissolved. You'll see it's not completely dissolved, it's all come up to the top here. So you're gonna want a couple of back and forth. And you can see the red is starting to come through from the strawberries and that little bit of brown from the vanilla that I used. And honestly, all I can smell is the vanilla. So once your sugar has started to dissolve, you're gonna want to very carefully let off some of the pressure so that it doesn't completely explode. So that's where I say you do want to let the air off every day. It will explode if you don't. So either it will blow the top off, or the first time you go to open it, it will be a giant explosion in your face. So I say give it a little shake in the morning just to make sure that nothing is settling on the bottom. And especially with fruit in here, if I didn't shake it, it's gonna sit right there because the fruit's floating in the bubbles. And you're just gonna get this ring of film, kind of like the bathtub ring, because the fruit is continuing to ferment in here as well as your kombucha. So this is also why we are going to take the fruit out in a couple of days. You don't want to leave it in there or it will just continue the fermentation and decay process, and then you're not gonna wanna drink it. But if you aren't giving it a little bit of agitation, you're gonna get this ring of sediment kind of right there at the top of the bottle. But anytime you shake it in any way, you do want to let some of the gas off so that you don't result in loads and loads of pressure building up in there and a big giant mess when you go to check on it. All right, so now you have your second fermentation ready to go. Your mother SCOBY and the new baby SCOBY are back into your hotel. Your hotel is just a jar filled with the leftover liquid from the first fermentation. So we make sure we have enough to fill this vessel, and any liquid that's left over from your original fermentation, pour that in here with your SCOBYs. These guys can stay in the fridge for ages. I think this hotel has been cycling through SCOBYs for at least 6 to 8 months. Anytime you want to start a new batch, you'll need your new brew vessel, at least half a cup of the liquid in your hotel, and any one of your SCOBYs, and you start another batch again with your cold brewed tea, and we start the whole process over again. Everything that is in this container is going to now sit at room temperature anywhere from 3 to 5 days. I find 3 days is usually plenty. Give it a gentle stir shake in the morning and then let the pressure off, and then a gentle stir or shake before bed and let the pressure off again. And you will start to notice over the next couple of days that you want to be very gentle with opening your bottle. If you just pop that and let it fly open, you are going to get an explosion. But we are keeping this room temperature so the fermentation process can continue until we meet again in 3 to 5 days for the final stage, which will be to strain out any of our fruit or flavorings. Thanks for joining the second stage in our process of Brew Your Own Booch, and we will see you in a few days. All right, welcome back to the last and final stage in the Brew Your Own Booch process. This is actually the easiest step, the shortest step, and this is where you reap the rewards of all of your hard work. I will say at this step, being patient and willing to go slowly is going to pay off, because our fermentation process in here has resulted in lots and lots of fizz, especially the shape of my bottle with the narrow neck here. There's gonna be a little bit of explosion. The main reason at this stage that we are now removing our fruit and anything we've used that's a solid piece to flavor our kombucha is that if we leave it in there, it's going to continue to ferment, and the fruit's going to continue to break down, and that's just going to result in it starting to decay, and it will your kombucha will just go bad very quickly. So this stage is removing any of the fruit and straining out any last lumpy bits that you might not want, and then rebottling and chilling to enjoy. So at this stage, depending on the type of container that you've used, if you've used a swing top, you can hold it when you release the pressure. If you've used a tightly screwed airtight jar, just very slowly start to let the pressure off, and you're gonna see what I mean in a minute. I'm probably gonna have to go from a slow to a quick release based on how much gas was in here this morning when I checked. So let your pressure off, and you can see it go there, and the pressure is going to bring the fruit up. So this is why I also have this bowl here, there we go, to basically, And look at all that lovely fizz in there. So now that we've got all of the fruit out of there, basically, you can even see my strawberries here. The color, all the good stuff is gone. That's how we got the lovely pink color in the final product. Even the basil that I used in this batch is no longer bright green. The fruit's really soft and squidgy. So at this point, if you have a composter, you can feed this to your worms. If you don't have a composter, throw it straight into your green bin, and it will go compost at the dump. But it has served its purpose. There is nothing left in this fruit. You don't need to worry about trying to salvage anything beyond this point. It has done all of the goodness. And then all we're gonna do now is rebottle. So that's what I have this funnel for here. I can pour my final product back in there. You can see it's nice and fizzy, which is exactly what we wanted. If you find when you open your bottle that you don't get that really exciting explosion or geyser like I got there, that's fine. You don't maybe need a geyser. But if it doesn't seem that it's fizzy enough for you, give it a taste. And if it's not as fizzy as you'd prefer, then give it another day. Check it again tomorrow. And again, you can leave it for up to anywhere between 3 to 7 days on the second round of fermentation, based on how much fizz you would like and what kind of flavor you want. So if it doesn't have the amount of fizziness that you want or doesn't have the flavor you were expecting on day 3, then give it a couple extra days before you continue. But like I said, if you go beyond that 7 days, even after 3, you can see that my fruit has really started to decay. So I don't recommend, if you're doing a batch with a fruit flavor, that you push it beyond maybe 4 days, or the fruit's really going to start to break down and ruin your batch. But you may find a batch that you're just doing something like ginger or a herby flavor, or even a herbal tea, that you can give it a couple of extra days and not worry too much about what you're using as a flavor infuser ruining the flavor of your batch. So that is it. At this point, we have rebottled. I'm just getting a little piece of basil off there. Seal it up tight again and refrigerate until it's cold, and you can serve. I mean, you could try a little bit now to make sure that it tastes the way you want, but otherwise chill and serve as desired. Serve over ice, use it in a mocktail or a cocktail. I do suggest, if you're going to try and use it in something like a smoothie, that you only add small amounts, because carbonated liquid in the blender and a smoothie will result in a massive explosion. But that is basically the final step in your brew your own process of making kombucha at home. So thanks for joining me. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments or send me a direct message, and I'm happy to help. Thanks again for joining, and happy brewing.